Hello. Thank you for joining me for Nick's Tips for Marketing. I'm Nick Fuller with iTherapy. And of course, this is Nick's Tips where we are helping you out with your marketing. And this is an extra kind of free service that we've got with iTherapy available just for you. Today's a special day. You're not just going to get to hear from me. You're also going to get to hear from my lovely colleague, Ben Miles, today. Let me tell you a little bit about Ben. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Design from UCF in 2008 and has been working in design fields ever since. Just boom, boom. Ben has, kind of done a few different things, but he has experience in print. He's done logo design. He's done tons of web development, probably too much web development. No, I'm just kidding. No, lots of different websites, which is great. So he brings that wealth of experience to all of us today. Really happy that I get to, work with him. He's part of the team at Shire Digital Solutions, which also means he's here for us at iTherapy. Thank you for joining me today, Ben.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk a little bit about what I like the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be covering a lot today because we are going to talk about branding, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different elements to branding, but we want to cover three specific things today. We're going to first kind of cover picking a name, which is important, of course. We're going to cover logo, which is important. And then we're going to cover color. And we want to talk about all three of those things today. So let's get right into it.
Yeah.
When you're picking a name, I think there's two kind of main options, right? There's either, if you're a solo practice, you are probably makes the most sense to just use your own name, right?
I agree.
Possibly include maybe your professional license, like LCSW, but probably makes the most sense to use your own name. Um, but there's some exceptions, right? Um, I would say if your name is particularly difficult to spell or pronounce, like if your best friend has to ask you how to pronounce your name or spell your name, when it's your birthday or something like that, don't use your name. At least not like your main name. Maybe use like Dr. S or something, like some variation that's definitely possible. Um, yeah. The other thing is you may not want to use your name if you have a especially ubiquitous name, or if your name is like kind of, if there's some like unsavory famous people that are related with your name. Actually, if my name was Bam Majera, I probably wouldn't use my name ever.
Right.
He was cool at that time, I guess, but I always
Some
thought he was a
associations you
jerk.
might want to avoid. Yeah.
Yeah. He seemed not like a nice fellow. But anyway, um, so yeah, but I mean, overall, you probably want to use some variation of your name if you're solo practice. It just makes the most sense. Um, the other thing I'd recommend you do though is Google your name, and as you're doing that, kind of get a sense of what's going on. Again, if your name is Jane Doe and there's a whole ton of Jane Does, maybe that's not going to make sense, and you're going to get a sense of that right when you Google your name. The other thing that can kind of help you figure it out is, if you're using your name and there's other people that are in your field that are showing up with the same name, well, maybe it's time to make a variation on your name. What kind of variation do I mean? Can be easy. Kind of professionally, I usually go by Nicholas W. Fuller, but that's not the way my friends or my wife call me. um, but I have like nicholaswfuller.com, and I make sure that nobody else has that, right? Um, and there's not too many other Nicholas W. Fullers out there. And part of the way I arrived at that is by Googling my name. Um,
Brilliant.
right? We have a client whose name is Amy Williams, and there's another Amy Williams out there in the world doing the same kind of work, actually in her same state. So as we were working with her to get a site established, we kind of kept searching around. What we settled on was she can go with Amy J. Williams LCSW. Now, a little long, but none of that's terribly difficult to spell or anything. And it's really going to differentiate her from everyone else, right?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, all that in mind, that's one option, use your own name. The other option is to use a fictitious name. And Ben's going to tell us a little bit about the idea of fictitious name and when that might be best.
Yeah, fictitious names tend to be better suited for group practices where you're trying to represent, a group of people with more than just one collective last name. Um, it's going to be good for people who, like you said earlier, have names that are maybe a little bit difficult to convey in text, either because of the spelling or the pronunciation. And I think it's also good for people who just have a really strong idea about how they want to connect with their audience through some kind of objective imagery. I think we'll get to all of that in just a minute. Um, a couple of good examples of practices using fictitious names that we have worked with recently would include mission ready counseling, in which case, is that now a group practice? They've got a couple of people under their
Sure
fold.
is. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, for them, they knew right away that they were going to be speaking to a predominantly enlisted audience, military members, their spouses, their families. And
Yep.
another example that I think that we would want to talk about is set sail therapy, in
Yes,
which
sir.
case it's a solo practitioner, but she had a little bit of a difficult to pronounce, a little bit of a difficult to spell last name. And so she wanted to use some kind of iconography, basically the idea of sailing, to reach out to an audience that's looking for, freedom from anxiety, freedom from stress, and
Yeah.
leveraging the imagery of a beach and sailing that all kind of represented that freedom between the practitioner and her patients. So
Absolutely.
two examples of where you might want to lean more towards a fictitious name and how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think again, just yeah, absolutely. What's great when you're picking a fictitious name, you want something that's going to resonate with your ideal client, right? And in both of these examples, they did such a great job of that. With mission ready counseling, I mean, you get it right away. You don't even need to know. I could have not pulled up the site and you'd have a good sense of who she's talking to, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it's going to resonate with her ideal client. Um, and same thing with set sail. I love the way you're kind of capturing it, like, and you did a great job with the site of kind of integrating that theme and that iconography across the whole site. But it helps, you're setting sail, you're casting off, you're getting some freedom, not being held back by that anxiety that used to hold you down before. So, and I totally agree with you. If you have that kind of idea of some objective imagery that you want to really have be kind of an ongoing theme, it's so much better to think about that early on and get that down with your branding, so because it's so much harder to kind of work that into everything down the road, right?
Bingo. Yeah, absolutely. Knowing what kind of imagery you want incorporated into your brand from the get-go really helps out your designer because it helps lay out all the cards on the table before we get
Right.
started, and that's priceless.
Which, I'm gonna wing something here, Ben, which
Yeah.
isn't to say that that's absolutely necessary though. Like if you don't kind of come in with sort of this strong uh iconography idea, that's okay. We can still work with that. It's just, again, it's going to be hard to add that later. But let me show you another site we did real quick.
Yeah.
This is Dr. Belinda Barnett, and I think her site is absolutely gorgeous. But there's not the same sort of theme like Set Sail has, right? But this totally works, and it's a great, beautiful site.
Thank you. Little
So
little more wide open. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, with her, we knew that she was super proud of her hometown in,
Pittsburgh. Yep.
in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so yeah, that city skyline from Pittsburgh became an integral part of her site's design.
Yeah. Yep. I like that. Yep. But I mean, yeah, everything kind of came together pretty well with that one. So
Yeah.
cool. Now, another thing, I just showed Belinda Barnett's, and you'll notice there wasn't a logo there. So that does bring us to like our next point of logos. Is a logo necessary? No. I think no. I mean, it's not apps. Is it critical? No. Is it something where like, there's going to be a client and they're going to be looking at your practice versus another practice. They're going to be, well, the other practice has a logo. I can't imagine an instance where that's really going to be the deciding factor. So like, don't feel like this is something you have to go throw money at. All right. All that said, is it something you can do? Yeah. Is it something that's maybe a good idea? Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's sort of nice. So let me explain some of the benefits, and well, actually, Ben can explain some of the benefits, and we're going to tell you what kind of options we like for logo. Again, bearing in mind just briefly that it's not strictly necessary. It's just something that you can do that's going to it sets you apart a little bit. I'll stop talking. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so being a designer, I might be a little bit biased, but I think that, having a logo is worth it. Necessary, maybe not, but worth a little time and investment, absolutely looking into, for sure. The advantages of having a logo is, whether or not it's even a great logo or not, just by virtue of having some kind of an obvious logo mark, it's going to set you apart from the crowd. It's going to make you look a little bit more professional, a little bit more established, like you have a little bit more time, energy, and money maybe invested into your business, and that lends you a lot of credibility. Aside from that, having some kind of an established logo mark is going to create a lot of consistency across all of your marketing channels, be it printed collateral like business cards or invoices, in the signature of your emails that you're sending to clients, or any kind of social media profiles you might have. Having a consistent logo across all of those channels is going to make you look a lot more well put together.
Yeah, no, absolutely right, and I do agree. So there's two scenarios again, going back to what we were talking about earlier with picking your name. There's either kind of using your own name or a fictitious name, right? If you're using your own name, and I'm going to show yet another site, we really like the idea of these kind of signature logos. So there's another company that makes these signature logos that we've recently become aware of, and it's Photo Logo. You can see that here up at the top left of Heather Vignali's site. But she's, it's just Heather Vignali. It's not like a big group practice. And this is, we put together her site, and it's a good example of individual branding around her name. But I mean, doesn't it kind of look just, it gives it that little extra, that je ne sais quoi, right? Just a little something more out of having that signature logo there. So we like that photo logo option. And Ben, I think, can talk about what we like about it.
Yeah, that style of logo is great for someone doing business under their own name. It lends a human touch to your website that is priceless. It's going to make you look, again, a little bit more put together, a little bit more consistent across all of your branding channels, but specifically with a signature logo like that, it looks a little more human. It looks a little bit more personable. It looks a little bit more relatable. And yeah, I guess we should preface this by saying that we're not sponsored by Photo Logo, but if they wanted to reach out to us,
right?
We're open to it. Photo Logo, we really like your work.
That's true.
They Photo Logo specifically does a really great job of these signature logos. They do them inexpensively. They started around, I think, $50 is the starting rate, whereas an otherwise professionally developed logo by some design agency could cost you $500, $1,000, several $1,000s or more.
Yeah.
You're starting at $50 here, and that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
They're fast. They turn it around in about a week, and the work that they do is very high quality. They give you a vector file in the end, which is super versatile. Your designers will love working with you, and you'll love working with these files. So,
well, maybe you won't, but the designer will. The design, yeah. I don't know that the average therapist knows how to work with a vector file, but no, I agree. And I love your point too of these signature logos make it so much more human, which is absolutely yep. And that's so important. We're gonna do another video later where we're talking about the importance of photos, and the reason why is because it makes it more human. But yeah, all right. So well said with the photo logo. Now, of course, the other option is if you're using a fictitious name. And again, I actually think if you're using a fictitious name, I would be even more inclined to do a logo than if you're working with your own name. So especially, if it's something where your fictitious name draws up some objective imagery right away, and some obvious images pop into your mind.
Right.
Let me show Mission Ready one more time. And we actually developed this logo. Well, Ben developed this logo here for Mission Ready Counseling. And Yeah, but there was some obvious things that we wanted to cover. You know, the man saluting made total sense, but she also works with whole family, so we got the whole family involved there. But the star and the kind of like ribbons, very heavily kind of leaning on military themes, you know, military
Mhm.
iconography. So, you know, again, if you're using a fictitious name and it's sort of clearly associated with certain kind of imagery, then that's something you can build on when you're creating a logo, right,
Yep,
Ben?
absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree. And that's a perfect example to show it. The again, our client had a very clear idea of who her audience was and what kind of image was going to resonate with them, and that informed her picking out the name, and the name informed the design. It all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What I think what's so great about, you know, her name and her logo is that we, yeah, just like you stated, we know it was going to resonate with her clients.
Right?
Absolutely. So the other option, though, I think is that it could do um, uh, a word mark. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, yeah. For companies that again are stepping away from just a single practitioner's name, if you're a group practice, if you are using a fictitious name, for example, especially one that maybe is a little less subjective, like Nick said, it doesn't really conjure a clear mental picture of some object that exists in real life, but rather it's just more abstract or kind of a made up word even.
Mm-hmm.
That's when a word mark might come in.
Mm-hmm.
And a word mark is literally just basically some decorative text. It might not include any kind of imagery whatsoever, not an abstract icon or image, not any kind of image that people would recognize, just the letter forms that make up your name with some kind of decorative twist to it. Good examples might be Google, for example. It's just a very simple sans serif font with their red, green, yellow, blue colors. Maybe Coca-Cola, they've got that very kind of like,
Yeah, that calligraphy, right?
right? Yeah, it's a little timeless. They've changed it very little from their conception. IBM is another one. It's just the letters IBM, but again, it kind of looks a little computery. It lends itself to what they're trying to do, the product and the service they're trying to sell, and speaking to the audience they're trying to talk to.
Perfect. Yeah, love it. One more kind of just point of clarification. We've talked about objective imagery, and I think, you know, the military iconography makes sense. It's kind of, you know, it's an object, right? That's objective imagery,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Can you give an example of like abstract imagery, which is the other? I think like there's some abstract logos out there too, right?
Yeah, for sure. Whereas an abstract, or excuse me, an objective image is based on some object that you or I might recognize in real
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, some kind of a military badge or the silhouette of a military personnel for mission ready. An abstract bit of imagery or an abstract logo mark would be something that really doesn't exist in real life. And yeah, good example would be like the Nike swoosh. It's ubiquitous. Everybody knows what it is, but it really isn't something that you would
Right.
see in real life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that makes me think of my other video, where I talked about kind of overall marketing, and I was talking about the marketing funnel. At the top of the funnel is awareness. Everybody knows what it is because everyone knows Nike, and they've done a great job with awareness. Plus, it's been a brand that's around. Like if you started a brand new business and it's like, here's my, and no one had seen that before, then be like, "Oh, fuck, they sell shoes? I didn't get that out of, you
Yeah,
know, like.
yeah, a little bit
So
of
I
a
do.
hard sell.
Right, right. I think if objective imagery would probably be my preference for logo design. I think at least, you know, unless you have a huge branding marketing budget.
Yeah, I would agree. It definitely, a picture is worth 1,000 words. An objective image in your logo definitely helps narrow down your potential audience and what it is you're trying to do and specifically how you do it.
Awesome. All right. Color. Lastly, color. All right. So color, I think, is also super important, especially as you're kind of establishing the branding. Um, because it sets the mood. But it's nice so, and we'll get into that. But what's not, what if you can establish your branding colors early on? Again, it's kind of like that logo, and of course your name. You can carry it through all your marketing, right? You can have some of your social media posts have those colors integrated. Of course, you can put it on a business card if you're doing that. Definitely, it's going to be on your website, right? So thinking about this early on makes sense. And again, like, why is it important? Because it's setting the mood. Different colors, we know this, we kind of experience this, right? Different colors kind of make us feel different things. Like our reaction to a painting that's predominantly blue is going to be very different to reaction to a painting that's probably predominantly red, right? So kind of build on that a little for me here, Ben.
Yeah, sure. That was a great example with the paintings. Yeah, I think it bears repeating, first of all, to say that all of these things kind of influence one another. Picking a name can influence what kind of a logo you want to go with. The kind of logo you go with helps you pick the colors for your branding. And all of these things influence one another. So it is important to think of all of them early on. But yeah, how colors influence a mood. Colors have meaning. Colors have associations that they're often very ingrained culturally. Oh yeah, and Nick has just pulled up this blog article that I wrote for our Shire Digital blog a while back.
And we'll
That
put
kind
the
of
link
lays
to
out.
this in the comments. We'll put the link to this blog post and you'll be able to check this out yourself.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Just to kind of like cherry pick a few really good examples. Red in Western culture often is associated with passion, be it either like love or anger. Red is a passionate color. Green often associated with nature, money, health. Blue can be tied to stability, corporations. Um, I think blue is a great color to lend a little bit of credibility to an institution. You see it a lot in banks. Um, Pink can be femininity, love, great for marriage counseling, relationship counseling specifically. You'll see those a lot. White is something that we use a lot in all of our palettes. It's often tied to ideas of purity, cleanliness, organization.
yeah.
Yeah. And beyond all of that, the colors that you choose should be there to support the text content that you've written for your site. You need to think about, who your audience is, how you speak to them, how they like to be spoken to, and your colors should support all of that.
Right.
The tonality of your messaging.
Right. And just building on that, there's some colors and some moods and tones that kind of make sense in your marketing material. We're probably not going to throw a ton of red, into things because we don't want to kind of get someone that's like, especially if it's, a PTSD veteran or something. Like, I mean, we've got a little bit of red in Mission Ready, but we don't want to overdo it. We don't want to be like a bull tamer, that's like too much red is going to be a little bit like that. We want to kind of cool it down, right? Calm it down. So maybe a little bit more blue is kind of that is a calming color. And I think, yeah, I mean, we kind of got some example little palettes here that talk about exactly that, right, Ben?
Yeah. I think that there are some commonalities to the kind of color palettes that we use the most for counseling and therapy organizations, for sure. Like you said, red definitely doesn't tend to be a top pick. I want to preface all of this by saying that there aren't a lot of design laws or rules, just guidelines. There's always exceptions. There's always context that reveals kind of some extra options for you. Red might be a great choice as an accent color on a website that's predominantly green. Use it very sparingly and it draws a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's not really a color that you want to use predominantly. For therapy and counseling websites, we see a lot of blues, we see a lot of greens. These are cool colors. They tend to speak more with a calm, soothing tonality that supports our providers' messages.
Right.
And we tend to use a lot of white and tints. So softer colors that have a lot of white in them tend to work better.
Yeah. And it works. It works for our clients,
It does.
Awesome. Cool. Any last thoughts on colors specifically, or I think we get everything?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. You can check out the blog article for a little bit more in-depth information on some of the topics that we talked about, but yeah, I think we covered it.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, I think that's actually everything then. So just to recap, we've been talking about branding. Again, this is something you want to think about kind of early on in your private practice career. You gotta get your name figured out. That's important, you know. Most of the time, if you're going to be solo practice, probably makes sense to use some version of your own name, but you can also do fictitious practice, or sorry, fictitious name, and that does make sense if you're doing a group practice. You think about a logo. We like that those photo logo guys. If they want to come to us, let us know. But yeah,
Yep,
that's
your check to eye therapy,
right.
arrow.
Exactly. But no, I mean, we don't get anything from them. We just think it's a nice service, and um, looks good. Adds that little extra and just makes it a little bit more personal. So that's an option that's there for you. Otherwise, you know, especially if you're using a fictitious name, if there's some objective imagery that kind of comes to mind, then you know maybe run with that with a logo. And color, again, something to be thoughtful of, something to be mindful of. If you're working with, you know, designers like us, if you're building your website, then we're definitely going to be thinking about that and working with you on that, trying to establish a palette that you can use through all of your marketing. But yeah, I mean, the more that you're kind of consistent with all these elements, the more it's going to make your whole practice look more cohesive, more thoughtful, more professional, right?
Nailed it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for watching. Hope this is helpful. You know, we're going to keep putting these out for you and having these next tips available. And thank you, Ben. Thanks for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. Bye.